All right, guys. Well, welcome to Raw with Sess. My new interview is with Jennifer Lambert. This is what I call my sister from the mission. We served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints back in,
2006.
gosh, we're old. Older, but wise. And so I'm excited that she's here and she's going to give herself a little quick introduction. But we've known each other for what, 14 years now or
Yeah, long
13?
time.
And
Over a dozen.
I know, and I'm kind of a flake. So when they do things together, I tell them I'm coming, and then I change my mind last minute, or I'm out of town. But she always checks in on me, so I'm grateful for her and our sisterhood. I
And I
know.
didn't bring a cat with me this time, so we're good.
Thank goodness. But anyways, we're gonna have her just introduce herself for a little bit, and we'll get rolling with the questions.
Okay,
So
so how do you introduce
go
myself?
ahead and introduce
Okay,
yourself.
I'm Jen Lambert. I am from Montana originally. Went to BYU, Provo, graduated without getting married. Served my mission actually later in life. I was 26 years old when I went out on my mission. Came home and got married to somebody who I'd met beforehand.
Yeah.
Everybody knew about him on my mission.
Yes, we did.
And then we have 3 kids, ages 11, 9, and almost 7. I've done leadership development consulting for a number of years, as well as I'm a realtor. So I love to build up communities, and something that I'm really passionate about. 2 topics I'm incredibly passionate about, besides community first, are mental health awareness as well as running. I'm a huge passionate runner, discovered it in college and have just not as fast as I used to be, but I still love to run and
She's still running though.
I am still
When we
running.
were on the mission, I didn't really care for running. There's 2 companions that ran all the time. It was Manco and Beverage Lassie, which is her maiden name.
Sister drinking dog.
And I was trailing behind her in the mornings, but I
would
was good
I would get all
motivation.
my companions, even if they just sat there and I'd run circles in a parking lot, I would make them get up with me so I could go run. And so now I have a whole bunch of youth come and run around my block in the summer. I have a Highland running club in Highland, Utah, and I have about 230 kids that come rock my block in the summer, and it's amazing to see what they do. It's so cool.
The progress,
So
right?
cool.
You
So
love
that's
seeing it.
a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Well, you're an amazing person. I'm so grateful that you agreed to do an interview with me. And congratulations on the Golden Award.
Thank you.
She got the Golden Award 2020. So
it's an award you get
it.
for production within the brokerage with Better Homes and Gardens. So I was really excited to just be so blessed.
Yeah.
Building those relationships and helping people achieve their dreams. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into it. So the reason why I had asked you originally was because you had shared a little bit about a suicidal moment with your mother. Mm-hmm. And I didn't expect it because we were just pushing it for a fundraiser that was taking place in February. And, we've gotten so much support and love from our family and friends. And Jennifer actually shared a bit on Facebook as she reposted Robert's Place website. And we really do appreciate you encouraging people to join us in the fight for better mental health and trying to encourage our youth to avoid suicidal thoughts and to just move past that. So if you just want to go in a little bit about that moment that you shared on Facebook.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. A lot of people who know me, and a lot of you who don't know me who are watching this, my mother had an autoimmune disease that she was diagnosed with when I was 12 years old. It's chronic autoimmune hepatitis. So her body started rejecting her liver like it was a foreign substance and just started breaking down every organ in her body. Man. So my middle school and high school years, I was more of a caregiver and a caretaker of my mom, and in and out of every single hospital. On the 8th floor, she stayed in every single room in the Montana Deaconess Hospital.
Wow.
During my high school years. And what I shared on Facebook, a lot of people don't know. I mean, a lot of people don't know the hard things we go through, right? And they don't know what people are enduring.
Yeah.
My mom suffered with depression and anxiety, a lot of depression because of her invisible illnesses.
Yeah.
But also addictions come in with it, right? You're just trying to numb the pain. There's a lot that overflows. It gets really intensified. But I remember coming, I'd gotten out of school one day my junior year. I think it was probably like March time frame, and my dad's like, we need to go up to the hospital. I just wanted to let you know that your mom tried to take her life today. And I just remember just being like, I just want to selfishly, I just want to live a normal life. Like, why am I 15, 16 years old and we're going to the hospital yet again, because my mom tried to take her life. So that's the horrible part that was going through my mind.
Yeah.
And I get there, and my mom, just for people to understand, I mean, she was a mountain of a woman, strong, grant writer, fearless, independent, feminist, cause for everybody. Like, I mean, she was like a She-Ra, a princess warrior kind of woman. And she was also a larger woman, and through her illnesses, she went from about 260 pounds to 88 pounds.
Wow.
Having tube feedings going in her, like a Hickman tube.
Yeah.
So like it was pretty intensified what her body went through. And I remember going to the hospital and seeing her, and just there were just some cuts on her wrists. She didn't even have the strength to do very much,
Mm-hmm.
but she just wanted the pain to go away.
Yeah.
And I saw it all. I was there for so much of it, but I don't know what she was going through. I just knew that it was relentless and it never stopped. Like, we might have bad days. I have bad days, but I don't have this relentless pain or voices or whatever it is, that this mental health and invisible illnesses are really challenging.
Yeah.
Because people can make all sorts of assumptions, but like you couldn't see it. Like, you started to see physically what happened to her, but you couldn't see what was actually going on in her body on the outside. It wasn't a limb that had been cut off or something like that. But I just remember going in, and I wanted to go to my youth women's activity that night and be normal. And I remember going in, and just, she left me doing her hair and her makeup. It always made her just feel so good. And so I just did her hair and her makeup. I curled her hair and put on makeup, and we sang together, and I just wish I could have taken her pain away, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, there was nothing I could do. And she suffered, just for people to know, she suffered with this autoimmune disease for about 8 years. She didn't die from suicide. She attempted suicide at least once that I know of. There could have been other times that I'm not aware of. My family was also kind of disconnected a lot. It was a lot that we went through with all of this over the years. And she died when I was almost 21. Her body just finally gave out and shut down. So it was a lot. But I just remember, the reason I like to raise awareness, and the reason I made the post, is a lot of people don't know that suicide touches everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. And it can be very, very, it's always personal, right? And there's a lot of judgment around it. There's a lot of stigma around it. A lot of it does stem from some kind of a mental health, chemical imbalance, or physical chronic health condition, in my experience with it. And so that's just something that I wanted to share for people to understand, that it can affect the people struggling with it and the family members, because they don't know what to do. What do you do to help? What do you do to not enable, to be a support, to be the right support?
Yeah.
How do you navigate these waters? And I think the more we can have healthy conversations about it, the more that people can know They see me as a strength and a positive influence in the world. And to know that I've gone through this, I traveled that course.
Yeah.
I didn't do things perfectly, but I kept going. So that's really my motivation for sharing that experience with my mother.
Man. You know, when you shared that, thank you so much for going over that. And I know it hits emotional chords in a different sense, especially when you're reflecting on it. And so I really do appreciate you sharing that again. It takes a lot of courage, when you posted it on Facebook. My mind was blown, and I just, because I've known you for 14 years, and we never really went into details while we were on the mission because our focus was somewhere else. And so when we've gotten to know each other more and more over the years, you start to get a little bit more personal, and it really touched me that you shared that, and I really do appreciate you sharing that publicly and also again here.
Well, you bet. One of my other passions, like I said, raising awareness around mental health and suicide prevention. I love to promote local community businesses, local community resources. So that's one thing I love to do, and sharing it, just not on social media, donating money. I wasn't able to be here for the plate event. I was in Disney World. And so I wanted to donate, and then I wanted to do more. So that's why I shared my experience. And I have lots of friends and family members. I have some unfortunate experience from people from my mission that have either attempted suicide or committed suicide. And it touches everyone. It touches everyone. And we have healthy conversations about it in our family. I don't shy away from it. At the same time, I also want people to know it's also normal to not know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is normal.
Which is normal. I don't struggle with those emotions, those thoughts, those feelings, but I do know a lot of people who do, and it's okay. You don't have to feel awkward because you don't understand it or because you're not quite sure what to do about it. But we do need to shed the light on it.
Yes.
And we do need to make a healthy and safe space to have these conversations, to share this stuff on social media in a healthy and positive way so that we can help not just raise awareness, but I know what Robert's Place is about prevention of it, right? As much as possible. That's the whole focus, is let's reduce this. And I know the pandemic, the numbers have spiked tremendously. And so that's where my heart has really gone to.
Yeah.
I'm more of an advocate for mental health than I ever have been in my life. A little side note, my grandma was schizophrenic. So mental health really, really runs in my family. And I just, with the pandemic, I really want people to feel like they have an advocate, that they can talk about it and not feel shamed, not feel alone.
Which is so important for someone to feel safe enough to come to you or to even listen, because it's important. And a lot of children nowadays, some of them don't have that positive influence or the affirmations that they should be receiving from a parent figure. And sometimes they got to seek elsewhere. And so kudos to you and hats off for constantly encouraging others and wanting to be an advocate for mental health, because it's a huge undertaking. Even if it's just little steps that people are taking, it's huge, because once you open the floodgates, it all comes out. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true. The more and more we've talked about suicide, the more we found out about other family members or other friends, or um, deaths that were natural were not so natural, and they came about after because we were public about
talking about it.
Yeah, talking about it, and it's important to open those doors for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you were 15 years old, and I'm wondering if you saw any signs or if you were able to identify any of those struggles with your mom.
Absolutely. You're able to identify them. And what's hard is hers was tethered to a chronic illness, right? So she was constantly in pain. Some of the signs are more obvious. Like there were times when she'd be in her hospital bed. And I remember one time the nurse said she has had enough Demerol to snow a horse, which means to kill a horse. And it didn't touch her pain. So when you're getting pain medications that are so intensified that they would kill an animal far larger than you and it's not touching your pain, right? You can
that's
only
just-
imagine. You don't want to stay in that. And I remember specifically one time, that was the night that nurse had told me, and it was about a year or so before that. And she was just, my mom didn't like, she knew we were in the room, but she didn't recognize us. So one of the things is people are aware that you're there, but it's like they're in a fog. They don't really engage with you.
Yeah.
And she would just say, I just want to die. I just want to stop the pain. I just want to die. So those thoughts were there. Man. Because she was done. Like she just couldn't carry it. And it was another 5 years of this, another 5 years of this, I think, that she continued to carry this. So, I mean, yes, the signs were there. I think one of the biggest things is the distance or withdrawal. Like even if they're in the room with you, they're a little more foggy because they have those thoughts going on in their head that they can't silence versus a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all had conversations like that with people when you know they're not listening. So you try to like tease them.
Yeah.
And you try to,
it's like,
and you just start saying things, right? Just to see if they're paying attention. And that's, you can often tell that.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is that they're just comments about, they'd give anything to just feel joy, to just feel normal.
Yeah.
To just feel, because a lot of my experiences, people will remember what it was like before they felt this way.
Yeah.
They can also get to a point where they don't. And that's a danger zone in my experience, is if they can't remember what that was like, then they're pretty far down that path.
Oh yeah.
But if they can still remember those, like, that's a pretty clear sign. So even at the age of 15, I would recognize that. It's also hard because what do you do with a chronic health condition that you can't no control over? I mean, several of my ends of high school were when it's semester tests and everything, I'd be at a Scottsdale, Arizona or an Oregon clinic with my mom having life surgeries kind of thing. So but those were some of the key symptoms behavior that I would see signs in my experience with it.
Wow. And being 15 years old, like you said, you were wanting to rush off to your youth activity and you're like, what? I gotta stop my life to help you. But at the same time, you had seen it. You had seen the patterns. You had heard her plea for those moments of when she wanted to take her life. And it's a struggle. When it comes to physical pain, it's one thing to get a scratch. But when you have something that you're struggling with constantly and there's nothing that can actually answer that,
absolutely,
that's frustrating.
And when people can't see it, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm gonna give a little shout out to iWay podcast on here.
Oh, nice.
Just because its focus is on mental health. That's why it was started by Jamelia Jamal. But there was one episode she did with a young girl who was like in my age, growing up with a invisible illness. And that's where something like that, mental health in and of itself feels like an invisible illness. And then you attach an actual physical ailment that people can't see, and it just makes the perfect storm, which can breed those suicidal thoughts, the depression, anxiety. And then where people around you start to feel like you're burdening them. I never felt this way, but my mom would constantly comment about how she was a burden to us, how I'm so sorry that it must get really old. And it's hard because it's a fine line. It is taxing, but I would rather have my mother here.
Oh yeah.
Right. And be caring for her in those kind of situations than, and I'll just share this because I remember this was after she passed away and my dad came in, because she was kind of needy with her health issues. She couldn't do things for herself, right? She couldn't go to so she was fairly needy, but she would come in and I'd be working. I just worked like 16 hours straight, and she'd be like, hey, Jenny, can you run to McDonald's and get me an Egg McMuffin? Because she couldn't keep food down. So if something sounded good for her, she wanted to keep it down, right? And I remember my dad coming into my room, I think it was a couple days after she passed away, like a week or so after she passed away. And he said, I would give anything for your mom to get me, like him just coming home from his paper route. He'd been up since 2 a.m. delivering papers, right? for her to say, go get me an egg McMuffin.
Oh.
So like in the moment, yeah, it can feel heavy.
Yeah.
But trust me, those people would take that heaviness all day long over that void and that emptiness.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, when I reflect on my brother and some of the requests that he had or some of the comments that he would share. And, you're right. You look back at it now that they're not here with us, you'd want it 10 times over, or 100 times over or 1,000, because you don't realize those little moments, you come to appreciate them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as a teenager, and I know you have siblings, what was the effect that it took on you guys?
That's a great question. Mine was a little bit of a different situation. I was home by myself because my brother had just graduated, so he was gone. He actually has suffered from addictions a lot of his life, and he's 4 years into sobriety.
Yes, so, that's awesome.
I remember he's reached out to me several times. In fact, when I made that Facebook post, he sent me a message just saying, I love you, sis.
Aww.
Because he wasn't, when stuff got really hard, he wasn't home. When this happened, he wasn't at home. So it was just me and my dad with my mom. And it was lonely, and you felt so isolated because you can't help her. You can't make it better. You don't feel like you can connect with the world around you.
Yeah.
Because, and I did theater, and it was my saving grace, because I'm just like, fine, I'll go be in a different world for a moment. And so you try to find outlets to help you feel a little either grounded. My faith was also a big part of my life that kept me grounded a lot. But you're searching for a place to connect. And I didn't have, so when you say, how did it affect other siblings? I didn't have younger siblings where it affected them that way, but I also didn't have a support system. There was no one for me to turn to have conversations about this with.
Which is so lonely. And you feel like you're in the corner.
And so my mechanism, I struggle with perfectionism, which is a form of an OCD, right? My whole life. Had eating disorders. I've had to overcome through it. I chose to just be like, well, nothing's going to get me down. I'm just going to be the best at everything and anything. And like, so it almost catapulted me into, well, fine, if I'm alone on this, then I'm just going to be independent and do it all myself and be strong regardless.
Which is great.
Which is awesome, but right? Can also be you start building those walls, right? Because so that's my story on that. So it didn't affect my brother. Had a really hard time because he wasn't there for all of it. And then the night that she actually passed away, he came in and saw her and tried to get her to go to bed because she was on the couch in the front room. And he's like, oh, she's just going to sleep out here, and left her. And he felt really bad because and there's nothing he could have done. Her heart was passed, right? Her heart stopped. But I remember he really struggled because he was the last one to see her alive.
Wow.
So it was hard to not be there for a lot of it. And then at the very end, him struggling with that. And so it's really hard how we and how it morphs us, right?
Yeah.
And so but having those conversations, I think what would have been really healthy and good is if I did have someone or a support system or community or people talked about, and even though we talk about how old we are, I'm like, it really wasn't that super long ago. I mean, 25 years, I'm dating myself here a little bit. About 25 years ago, it really, in the reality of it, it's not that long ago to have resources, but there wasn't this, like, you couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to go Google and find a support group. I'm going to go talk to my friends. My friends are going to know what I'm going through. Has anybody had this? Like, people would be like, what's wrong with you? And so that's where, I think that it would have been really helpful to have that.
That's awesome. And you're right. Oftentimes nowadays we're so quick to just go to the internet, or we're quick to just, hey, this is what I'm going through. I don't know what it is. Somebody give me some suggestions, and it'll be a post, social media. You jump on, it's like, hey, I'm needing some suggestions, and then everybody, it's like, oh, well, I guess I don't need to pay for counseling. Here we go. But it's at the tip of our fingers. But when it comes to things like that, sometimes they don't even want to look it up, or sometimes they don't want to research it because then they have to identify and deal with it. And
You have to
that's also,
recognize that
yeah.
it's there, right?
And oftentimes they don't recognize it, or they recognize it and are ashamed of
The
it.
stigma. I was just
And
going to say the
so,
stigma there, right? Like,
yeah.
well, and what I find a lot of times, so my mom's experience was a little different because she had such tremendous health issues. But I find in talking to some of my friends and family and people that I've known, they're like, something's wrong with me. Like, I have a good life. There's nothing wrong. Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And so there's a big stigma about why, when I'm so blessed and I have such a good life, do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And so there's especially I would say people not just of faith, but people who have a specific belief in an afterlife, or doing good to your fellow men and keeping the commandments, then I should be able to not feel this way.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's our mortal experience, right? It's our tests and our
Yeah.
trials. And so that's very much, I find that can be a struggle for people.
Yeah. And the more and more I've researched suicide, and I've researched mental health, and I'm identifying some of the things that I've dealt with. I'm like, I didn't even know that's what that was. Or wait, was that really depression at that moment in my life? And
Mm-hmm.
people think that when you're depressed, it's like an ongoing thing. But for other people that have personalities like us that are like, oh no, this ain't gonna get me down. I'm just gonna keep moving. They don't recognize it because it was just a blip. And
Yeah,
sometimes that blip will happen more frequently depending on what's going on in life,
absolutely.
to where they start to have this steady flow of depression where they need to go get medical help, or they need to go see counseling. And that's why it's important. And I love that um, it's encouraged more to just be around family. This pandemic has really encouraged us to be in our families. When we are all stuck in the house because no one can go out and everybody has to wear a stupid mask, like, everybody brought out the board games, everybody brought out the cards. And I believe that even though this was a chaotic year, it it could have been, or should have been, a huge blessing for families, because that's when you really get to know someone, when you're around them all the time. And I believe that it's opened a lot of doors for families because of the pandemic, in wanting to talk and wanting to spend more time and wanting to explore more.
Do you find that more people have reached out to you through your sharing experiences because of the pandemic as
Yes.
well? Because people are dealing with their emotions more. They're having, like, it's, they can't
Yes.
hide from them
And
as
that's
much.
another thing.
Okay.
It's like, oh, well, I'm in this four-walled room and it's quiet, and now my thoughts are alive and they're super loud. Um, this has been a great opportunity for our family because we've really wanted to focus on Robert's Place, especially my parents. They've dedicated a lot of their time and efforts in wanting to move forward with that. Um, but yeah, it has. It's opened a lot of people up to me, which I believe it's a huge blessing because, I've gotten to know a lot of family members and friends on a deeper level because they've allowed themselves to share something so vulnerable, and to them at times were shameful and embarrassing. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that they've given me to be a soundboard for them and to be able to share experiences, because it, there's a huge support that you feel when you know somebody else's experience. It may not be the
Absolutely.
exact same, but it's similar enough to where you can find that support. Just like a chair, you feel that leg giving out, and then all of a sudden you lean to the other side and you feel that strength. And
Absolutely.
so it's been a huge blessing, and I am grateful for the opportunity that they give me to actually listen and not necessarily compare, but really work through it. Because even me, it's been 2 years since my brother passed in February, I'm still breaking down some of the thoughts that I have and some of the questions. And, even during my mother's interview, I was having aha moments and recognition of, different bridges or different gaps that we had experienced. And it's been a great grievance for me as well, and a learning process. And it's just opened my eyes for more and more that's out there that we can provide for others.